We are constantly striving to start the employee journey in a strong way with a traditional 30, 60, 90-day feedback program with a bit of an untraditional twist. After we make a hire in Paylocity, that automatically initiates a series of surveys sent to the employee to gauge their onboarding process. Then feedback is routed to the employee's manager and the HR team so they can track the new hire's progress and address any gaps or areas of concern. Plus, with Alchemer's logic function, we can send follow-up information to employees if they answer questions in a way that makes HR think they might need some additional information.
Let's dive deeper into each of these topics. Bryn, let's talk about that 30, 60, 90-day onboarding survey when employees start. What are some of the challenges you face in that situation?
Yeah. Onboarding is incredibly important to retaining new hires. So we've struggled in the past, like a lot of organizations, with creating an effective and efficient onboarding program. So HR teams face two really big challenges when it comes to new employees. The first is high new hire turnover rates. Losing new hires is costly, and 80% of new hires who feel undertrained after onboarding start looking for other jobs immediately. And secondly, lengthy ramp-up periods. The longer the ramp-up period, the longer you are paying employees that are not yet providing value. So during a new hire's first 90 days, it is critical that they have access to the information, the resources, and support necessary to succeed and quickly add value. So to address these changes, we automate the feedback collection process to new hires during their first 90 days. That helps us identify areas of improvement and address problems in real time. So using Alchemer's reporting feature, we can get a holistic view of that new hire's first 3 months.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much, Bryn. Kathy, let's bring you into the conversation. Can you show us how you would set up a 30, 60, 90-day workflow in Alchemer?
Yeah, definitely. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, and I can go through a quick demo of that in Alchemer. All right. So what we're seeing here is a product that we call Alchemer Workflow, which is a key part of the Alchemer platform that lets you kind of orchestrate those HR actions that we were talking about and set up those automated processes. So I'm going to walk through kind of the setup process for a workflow first, and then kind of show you around the tool, and so we can get familiar with some of the options that are available here, and then we'll jump into the 30, 60, 90 workflow. So like Ashley mentioned, Alchemer supports several different HR systems, including Greenhouse, Paylocity, PeopleSoft, and Workday. And what you're seeing here is basically it's asking you how you want to start your automated process or your workflow. So in this case, if, for example, I want to start my workflow every time an employee gets hired or we have a new hire situation in Paylocity, I go ahead and select that. And this configuration step will just basically walk me through in a really simple step-by-step way how to set up that initiator. So I basically plug in my credentials. There is some setup needed on the Paylocity side to make sure that I'm mapping the right fields, and everything about that employee that I need to really personalize their experience gets pulled into the workflow. After I've done that, I just hit save, and then I'm all ready to start my workflow here. You can see this interface is what we call the builder, is a really intuitive drag and drop interface. So I can pull in steps like if I want to send an email out to someone as a part of my workflow. For example, someone gets hired and my first step is to send out an email. Then I just drag that step into the builder, and the workflow will kind of run through these steps one by one in order. Of course, feedback is a super important part of what Alchemer does, and a part of what we want to collect from our employees as they go through their onboarding experience. So I can go ahead and drag in my survey aspect into my workflow. This piece here, the if-else logic, lets you customize the experience and the flow to what the employee has said that they are interested in learning more about, or any concerns they have during their onboarding experience. So you can essentially add different conditions based on how they responded to their survey, which I'll show you in a second when we pop over to the 30, 60, 90. We also have ways to delay steps in your workflow so you communicate with your employees at the right cadences. And we also have connections that go out to other systems like Salesforce or Slack if you wanted to communicate internally, or Microsoft Teams, depending on where your employees are. So now I'm going to jump over to the built out 30, 60, 90 workflow. So you can see here, I've set up that Paylocity initiator to kick off the workflow whenever a new hire joins. And then I have that welcome email that goes out to the employee that you can customize with information from Paylocity about the employee's name and when they were hired, to make sure that they really have that personalized experience and that personalized touch as they move through their onboarding process. And then we have the survey invites going out with the delay at every 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. So we have a cadence of 3 emails that are going out and all set up to automatically get sent within this workflow. To jump into a little bit more detail on what that survey might look like, here are just some sample questions that you might want to include. So for example, how would you rate your experience at the company so far? Can you tell me more about that onboarding experience? And are there any topics that you'd like to learn more about? So you can check in on a regular basis and see if there are any gaps in the onboarding experience that would make it a better onboarding for the employee. Back to the workflow, we can also set up if-else logic, like I mentioned before. So in this case, I'm setting up at the 30-day feedback point, if an employee has said they want to learn more about employee benefits, I can, through the workflow, message that employee and send them a Slack which has all kinds of information about what are employee benefits. You can send them links out to the relevant resources so that they get that feedback and that information right away to help resolve some of their concerns. And you can set up as many of these as you need. So I have one set up for employee benefits. I have one set up for diversity and inclusion, and basically be really responsive to how the employee has filled out their feedback survey and make sure that we show that we're listening to their feedback and acting on it right away. In terms of reporting, you can definitely start to see trends based on how people are responding to the 30-day mark, the 60-day mark, and the 90-day mark. So you can see trends across all of your employees in aggregate at each of those points, or you can go deep and look at one individual employee's journey throughout the 30, 60, and 90 days. So you can go kind of both directions for your reporting needs. All right.
That's great. Can you share some of the high-level outcomes that we can see from that?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of outcomes that we might see by setting up this 30, 60, 90 program are, one, lower turnover and higher retention. So by giving new hires an avenue to provide feedback on their first 90 days, you can proactively address those gaps and create a better experience for both current and future new hires. And organizations with strong onboarding processes can improve new hire retention by 82%. We also see faster and more effective onboarding. So with those multiple touch points over that 90-day window, you can monitor employee growth and identify any areas where new hires need additional training or support at those regular intervals. And this reduces the time employees need to ramp up and sets them up for success in the long run by feeling more engaged and more confident in their new role.